This podcast is brought to you by Infrastructure Masons, uniting builders for the digital future. Looking to turn your innovative idea into the next big thing in digital infrastructure? The iMasons Incubator is here to help you connect with industry leaders, spark awareness, and accelerate your path to success. If your concept can help drive a more sustainable digital future, we want to hear from you. Don't miss this chance to grow, give back, and shape the digital landscape. Email us today at innovation@imasons.org to find out how the iMasons Incubator can help bring your idea to the world.
Dive into the world of data center innovation with the iMasons podcast, discovering the people leading the industry revolution. My name is Romain Truncheon, and today I'm joined by Yuval Bachar, founder and CEO of ECL, also known as Edge CloudLink, the company that builds and operates the best-in-class modular sustainable data center as a service. We've invited Yuval to talk about innovation following his receipt of the iMasons Innovations Awards. We'll talk about what makes organizations great at innovating, how leaders push innovation forward, and the link to education and recruitment. Let's get right into it. Hi, Yuval. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's a real pleasure. I know you're very known, and I've seen you many times around at different conferences and speaking slots and so on. But there might be a few people that listen to this podcast that might not know you yet. Do you mind giving us a bit of a maybe denser introductions to yourself?
Sure. My name is Yuval Bachar. I'm the founder CEO of ECL. Prior to ECL, I spent a really long time in data center world as a principal architect at Microsoft Azure. I worked very diligently as a chief architect of the data centers of LinkedIn, built everything that LinkedIn is actually involved in today. Prior to that, I was the architect for the networking division of Facebook. I worked with the OCP program and develop platforms which went into the OCP program. And before that, I spent a really long time at Cisco working on advanced technology and from core routers to the internet to switching in early stages. Started my career in a company called DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. So that's my history.
So clearly a long career of stepping into a role where things have got to change, right? Things are constantly evolving. And you and I have said in the past that everything we know about data centers, and that literally includes everything: power, cooling, management, even the resources that goes into managing those data centers will at some point need to be reinvented. I'd love to get your view on where do you see the biggest opportunities or necessities for reinvention, and what does starting from scratch actually look like in practice?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think we reached a point with AI that the traditional way of building data centers do not apply anymore. We can't use the same methods we used before. Even the advanced data centers that we used to build in the past are not applicable anymore for the AI workloads. It's starting from the power side. The power side became, first sourcing the power into the data center became a challenge, and we need to figure out how to get the power into the data center. But even inside the data center, the complexities are going higher and higher. We have a blending of high power racks, low power racks. We're hitting right now 150 kilowatts to 250 kilowatts per rack, and we are projecting 400 and 600. These are numbers which are mind-boggling because up until 2023, the average power in the United States per rack was 8 kilowatts. So this is like 20 to 40 to 50x what was the average in the United States. The global average actually was 4 kilowatts per rack. And we are now required for most of our new deployments in AI to actually be able to sustain much higher level of power distribution. But it's beyond the power distribution to a single hot point data center rack. It's actually the mix of low power rack and high power racks, which creates problems which are even more sophisticated, because if you try to create an environment where you can actually blend racks and leave the opportunity to actually move racks around, etc., the design of the internal power distribution become much, much more complicated. And now on top of all of this, there's now discussions about transitioning from AC distribution into DC distribution, which actually is a new breakthrough that people need to do, a new technology that people need to reinvent, and all aspects around that. And that is the power side of the things. Now, on the other side of the things is the cooling systems. The cooling systems became extremely challenged right now because we have high power racks which have over 100 kilowatts of direct on chip, which means that you need to create a loop which runs liquid in the data center to actually evict the heat from the direct on chip cooling, combined with about 35 to 40 kilowatts of air. And if you go back to my comment before, we didn't know how to do 35 kilowatts per air by itself. Now we have 35 kilowatts of air plus 110 of direct on chip. Again, requires a redesign of the data center. The old way of doing hot aisle, cold aisle isolation, and all those things just don't apply anymore. And again, going back to the mix of high power, low power racks, creating even bigger problems, because if you put a high power rack, for 150 or 75 kW rack, and put next to it a networking switching rack, which is like 20K or 15K, the networking switch rack cannot get any cooling capacity. So you have to actually be very creative on how to actually do the mix of high power, low power racks beyond just being able to evict the heat from the hotspots in the data center. And lastly, we're scaling at a level which is incredible right now. And that incredible scale is not humanly managed in the long run. We can't assume that people can look at screens and actually manage those huge data centers of multiple gigawatts. It has to be fully automated, has to be fully independent and actually completely autonomous. And people need to get involved only in cases where the autonomous system cannot handle it. Now, all of these things were not there 2 years ago. So all of these things are innovation from scratch that needs to happen to enable the future of AI data centers.
It's very impressive that we went from 8 kilowatt average, and granted we're comparing average to the maximum of what's going on right now, but the maximums are getting to 120, 150, 200 kilowatts, and the rate of change seems to have picked up a lot of pace. We used to have let's say 10 years, then 4 years, and now it feels like every year it's like the new iPhones coming out, the new versions coming out, and therefore we need to reinvent the entire infrastructure to support it. So how is maybe your teams, or maybe what are the principles by which your teams are shifting from as a traditional to disruptive innovation? And maybe take us through the way they think, design, and deliver that innovation into actual data centers.
Yeah, so it's an outstanding issue that everybody is dealing with right now. We operate in an environment where the technology is operating on a 9 to 12 month cycle. And for us to build data center on that cycle is almost impossible. We used to be on a 3 to 4 years cycle. Now we're down to about 2 year cycle. To be able to track the requirements of the data center and technology, you have to actually be on a 12-month cycle. And if otherwise, you will always build to something that you're not sure what you're building for. And that's a good recipe for failure. So the way I look at this is like we had to actually go and innovate and say, how do we do a 12-month cycle? How do you get that? And the way we approach that is actually we took it and say, okay, we build modular, because one small block we can build in 9 to 12 months. And then if we need to build hundreds of them, we just put the same block again and again and again to create that level of expediency in delivery of the data centers. That's how you can reach it 9 to 12 months. If you look at traditional data centers, if I'm a customer and I come to a traditional data center, say, here's the spec for my data center, build it for me. I'm going to get delivery in 24 to 36 months. That's 3 cycles of innovation and technology that will come from NVIDIA or AMD or anybody else that are going to do that. We cannot predict what will happen 3 cycles out. We don't know. So from our perspective, any spec that we give to a 3-year cycle or 2-year cycle is going to be obsolete in 12 months. And that's something that has to be changed in the way construction is being done, the way data center delivery is being done. The cycle of delivery became much, much shorter. The second aspect of that is after you deliver the data centers, those data centers generate tremendous amount of revenue very quickly. So every month of faster delivery means millions of dollars for your customer. So you have to try and accelerate. Now, all of these are areas that people did not actually worried about, because in the past, I can tell you from my experience in LinkedIn, we used to have a 3-year planning cycle. So we would plan what will happen in the next 3 years and then book data center space based on that. It doesn't work anymore. You can't plan 3 years out anymore because you don't know what you're going to need next year, not even talking about 3 years out. So as a result, innovation has to happen in the lowest level, in how you pour concrete, how you put walls up, how you actually create large facilities and large campuses. All of this has to be innovated on. So it's starting from the really basic of creation of innovation all the way up to the most complex management systems, which are AI-based, which are actually running this after you deliver this. But if you can't deliver this in the right cycle, you will never be able to actually be successful.
What you're saying is very interesting, and this is compounded by the fact that data centers used to be put out there almost as a stall, as a shop, if you wanted a 4 kilowatt, 8 kilowatt rack, and and then you would basically try and attract the clients. But now it's almost the other way around. You already have a client, and what you're trying to build around the infrastructure that they want, and that infrastructure is now becoming more powerful, more dense, more aggregated into very much smaller spaces. That said, there is an element of our industry that is that, we don't like to take risk. I mean, that speed is basically goes against the fact that we don't want to take risk. And you've spoken before about, the importance of leaders, creating space for risk-taking, for being able to fail fast. So what does a healthy fail fast culture looks like from maybe your organizations, or generally, how do you build that inside a data center company?
Yeah, so maybe I'll explain what fail fast means. We're not planning to fail, but our goal is to actually get to the point that we start investigating a new technology or any aspect of technology, and if we see that we hit the wall, we fail immediately and move to the next thing, because the number of challenges that we have are extremely high. And we never have enough capacity to actually have all of it being addressed at the same time. So fail fast means start innovation, do innovation. But if you see that something is not working, don't linger on it. Just drop it, do something else. Now, how is that working for our organization, and how is it working in other organizations as well? A lot of people are today not innovating and consider conservative because they're afraid of failure. People are concerned, if I fail, something really, really bad will happen to me. And it's a cultural thing to actually send a message to the team. It's okay to fail. We don't want you to fail too often, but it's okay to fail. Because if you fail, that means that you actually did something right. You actually try to break the barriers. You try to actually go above and beyond and out of the box to do something. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. You do something else. And that's a cultural thing. And I think I always like to quote a quote from my days at Facebook is, what would you do if you're not afraid? Like, basically, it was all over the walls in Facebook, and that's a really, really strong message of innovation. Don't be afraid. Just do what you think is right, and then keep on pushing it until you actually get success. That's an extremely, extremely strong position that most companies who build data centers don't do that. And the reason for that, except the hyperscalers, most data center operators are real estate companies. They're building data centers the same way they were building for the last 20 years. And for them, changing in technology and changing innovation within the engineering portion of the data center is a challenge. And now there's a very good book that I recommend for everybody to read called The Innovator's Dilemma. If you're staying stagnant in your environment and you think everything is okay, and you not trying to actually keep on actually changing, you will be disrupted at some point. And we are at the point that there is a disruption in the industry right now. And the traditional data centers operators are moving. Some of them are moving fast, and they will catch up. Some of them are just not moving because they think that everything is okay. And there is still a lot of business of cloud. So don't get me wrong. Not all the data centers are going to go out of business tomorrow. Cloud is still very active, but the AI portion of the cloud is starting to be more and more demanding and more challenging. And if you stay in the same place they were, and you're not investing in innovation, and you're not investing in creating new technologies, new capabilities, like I said, from everything, from concrete all the way to management systems, you will not be able to catch up with the market. Maybe you have a runway for another 3, 4, 5 years of cloud operators which still deploy servers, traditional servers and storage. But every time you need to deploy any kind of AI workloads, you're going to get into a place where your data center is not sufficient anymore.
So maybe for somebody listening, that at the core of what you're saying, there is really two precepts. The first one is literally, what would you do if you remove that fear? Like, remove the fear factor of failing, especially from a personal perspective. And it's very easy for somebody who is maybe on a full-time job where, you know, failure can have actually a personal impact. And the other one is, if I got you right, is there is that sunk cost fallacy where we're saying, well, we've invested so much into this already, we need to see it through. And what you're saying is, no. If you might have invested like substantial amount of time, effort, money, and so on, but what you really want to do is see it for what it is. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Drop it, learn from it, move to something else. It's really, really interesting. And what it brings to me is that all of this could also be short-circuited by the fact that we actually educate our next generation in this fashion to actually be able to push things forward. So do you think we should rethink education and recruitment to attract people for the next generation of data centers, and what that might look like?
Yeah, so education right now stays the same, more or less. I'm not saying that the education system does not follow what we do or to follow the tracking the industry advancement, but education, at least for undergrad, for most people, is more or less the same that it used to be in the past. It did not go through a major transformation. We need a different skill sets right now, a different set of skill sets right now to develop the future. And it's super exciting. So if the students which actually go to those schools look at what are the opportunities that they have to do with their education, it's pretty incredible. We didn't have this 20 or 30 years ago. Our options were very limited. Right now, options is really huge. On the other side, there's got to be a recognition that some of the jobs that were actually perceived as good jobs are going to disappear in the next 3 to 5 years. So some of the software engineering jobs are going to disappear. Some of the traditional aspects of how you actually develop are going to disappear, because we have tools right now which are superior to what individuals can do. So there's the need for people to operate those tools, but those tools are actually extremely strong. You can write software today without having any education in software, without writing a single line of code. You can get very sophisticated software packages, and that's something that people need to take a look. Are you actually addressing the need of the future? Because when you come out of college after 4 years, and look at what will happen 4 years out, right? Nobody nowadays can actually predict very well what will happen 4 years out because of the pace that we're operating under. So when you go to a school, or decide not to go to school and go directly to be a professional, you need to choose the areas that you think that will actually give you the best opportunity down the line to be able to create a career which is long-term. Just like we did when we were younger. We're looking, okay, what is interesting? Electronics is interesting, right? So computers are interesting. So we took that approach, but the pace that we operated in was probably a third or a quarter of what's happening right now. And then finding the right way to do this is interesting. Now, the second thing is, how do we attract people into the data center world? Because data center world was not really sexy for a very long time. Now it's actually became very, very interesting, very, very complex, and very, very impacting to society. We need to be able to message it out to the younger generation and say, hey, there's an opportunity over here to have really exciting work down the line for the next 25 years. It's not going to end in 1 year. You should probably consider getting into that domain of data centers from every aspect. If it's from the mechanical aspect of things, the software aspect of things, the hardware aspect of things, chip design, everything is actually on steroids right now. So that's the areas I think people need to actually focus on to be able to participate in that. And it's our responsibility as people in the industry of data centers to show them this is actually exciting, to show them that there's a long-term future in this. This is not short-term jobs that they're looking for.
There is part of what you're saying is there is definitely an optimizations that will done around certain jobs, and especially when we're talking about development, writers, marketing, and so on. That is actually stemming from what we're able to deliver to the market. That said, when we're talking about innovations, it always stems from having better ideas, more I would say leading edge ideas that we can bring into our industry. And what I've learned from our preparation is that you've actually recruited engineers from aerospace and even people who worked on NASA's cooling systems on the Mars rovers, which was absolutely fascinating for me. Do you think there is a lot we can learn from other industries and actually being able to bring that into the way we operate at the moment and maybe change radically the way we build, operate, and consume data centers?
100%. It's we cannot continue to operate as a silo, because there have been technologies that have been designed for more extreme environments than data centers, like technology that was developed by NASA and other organizations that suddenly became applicable for us. Now, these technologies are usually designed for one-off or two-off, so they're very expensive and very difficult to commercialize them. But when we come in and basically come and say, hey, we can commercialize this at a high volume, lower cost, then it opens tremendous amount of opportunity. And it goes back not only to NASA. If you go to automotive, for example, we took an engine, which is a fuel cell, which was designed for a car, created out of it a stationary power solution. And you say, okay, how did you do this? It's like, this is not the same function. I said, no, it's not the same function, but we had to actually take it and apply to it the requirements that we have for stationary power and create as a result of the solution, which is leveraging innovation that happened 15 years ago, 10 years ago for the automotive world. And this is just a couple of examples on cooling in Mars, right? Like Mars is an interesting thing, right? Because it doesn't have a lot of air in there, and it's really hot and it's really cold. So you need to be able to deal, when you send them a rover to Mars, you need to deal with the extreme situations of cooling that today, and even today, and with all the demands that we have, we're not there. But leveraging some of the sub-technologies that have been designed for that can actually accelerate the processes, accelerate the capabilities, and make us more efficient. When we do innovation, the first aspect of innovation is actually to solve the problem, right? I think my definition is innovation is basically designing the impossible and somebody can use it, right? So if nobody can use it, then it's not innovation, right? It might be interesting, but it's not innovation. And we are in a point right now that we need to use everything that we can have. So going to adjacent markets, adjacent verticals, which are touching similar aspects of what we do, is critical for us to be successful and give us a higher chance of success, right? Basically, we are in a position right now that we need all the help in the world to actually do what we're trying to do. And to be successful in that, if we don't do it properly, we will actually stay with the technology which is behind us. Data centers being built right now are 15, 20 years, needs a lifetime in them. So how do you actually predict 20 years out? You can't. Today, we can predict 5 years out. So 20 years out is very, very difficult. So the only way to actually keep up, basically, is actually bring the most advanced technology that we have, use AI to actually develop your technology in some cases, like in power generation and in management, etc., and make sure that you're going in a modular way that you can actually grow when it actually changes. If you put a building and say, this building is going to give me a returns for the next 30 years, you're wrong. It will not give you returns for 30 years. You will be obsoleted faster than you expect. And if you look at the market today, global market today of the data centers, there's a significant portion of the data centers for AI, they are obsolete. They cannot work. They don't have water in the data center. They don't have any capability to bring water or to do liquid cooling. Their efficiency level is disaster, like PUEs of 1.6, 1.8, 2. And when you're dealing with very high power environments, if you have an efficiency level which is in the 60% overhead, you basically consume much more power than you're supposed to. Yeah. And you will hit a point that you will not be commercially viable because you're not going to be competitive in the market. So there's so many aspects of this that we need to actually touch on. And the last thing that is very important, and I think very relevant to what we're doing today, is power generation. We as data center operators did not do power generation in the past. We did just the backup systems, which were actually active once a month or when in failure. Suddenly, we are required to actually go and design power systems because there's a challenge with the utilities, there's a challenge with transmission. We just can't get enough power over there's a huge place for innovation, because that technology has been stagnant for a very long time. You're doing the same thing for a very long time. The cycles are 5 to 7 to 10 years in some cases. And then the people who build data center come in and say, I can't wait for 7 years. What do? I have to go and innovate and create new ways to actually build those power system, new power stations. And you can see it everywhere, right? Every place that people build behind the meter, that's an innovation cycle. They don't copy the traditional way of doing power stations. They go and innovate in all the dimensions. And that's a new thing in data centers. We didn't do it in the past.
There is certainly something very true to what you're saying, which is if I go to a grid operator, and any service operator for that matter, if the need is powerful enough and the operator cannot actually provide it, then people will inherently innovate and actually find ways around it to be able to get it quicker, right? And interestingly, I mean, very timely that you talk about power, because this is the biggest constraint that we're starting to see happening, right? I mean, we'll find land, water is closely second to power, and we already have a number of discussions on similar podcasts where we talk about the trade-off between energy and water in different scenarios. But you've warned that we've actually entering a power scarcity or energy scarcity era at the moment, and the utilities are literally unable to meet the demand as fast as data centers would want it. So how do you see data center builders becoming part, if you want, of the energy generation solution, and what breakthroughs might truly change the equation? Is there something that is inherent to data center operators, or do you think grid operators still have the opportunity to maybe become more flexible and bring a lot of innovations to the market?
Yeah, I think data center operators are forced to do that now. And you've been forced to do something, you're going to go and do it the best you can. It's the same when we started. We started with clean slate, basically said, okay, forget about how data centers have been built before. Let's redefine it. Same thing happening with data center operators right now. Forget about how the power distribution was designed before. Let's start with a clean slate. And you've seen this with XAI. So in other places, say, I don't care how you actually built power before. I'll build it the way I think it's right. And that is a catalyst for innovation, because it's creating people that think differently, that come from different industries, right? Suddenly the data center people, the data center operators are coming into the energy generation platform. And they're trying to actually think out of the box and think, how did you build it before? Can I build it better? Is there different methods? I think we're in a situation right now that we have to be in a position that we can create energy in any way possible. And traditional natural gas or fossil fuel or renewables will have to be complemented with other energy sources. And they have to be complemented with other technologies. Like, for example, if you want to buy, a turbine, which is natural gas turbine, your lead time right now is 3 years for that. That is crazy. Somebody needs to figure out how to actually accelerate those processes. Why does it take 3 years to build a turbine? It's not because there's a queue. It takes them a very long time to build those turbines. Yep. So somebody needs to innovate on that level as well. And now what happens is that the generators companies which generate those turbines and other types of generation platforms are being pressured from a completely different way. They don't have a 7-year cycle anymore with them. They're getting pressured, or give me something next year. Well, I don't know how to give you something next year. I don't know how to upgrade my technology for next year. So there's a challenge over there how to do this, and they're doing it. They don't have an option. They have to actually be able to find a solution. The ways we work around this is actually bring new technology into the discussion. And if it's SMRs, and if it's fuel cells, and with natural gas or with hydrogen, if it's anything else that can generate energy, everybody is at least willing to take the risk and use it. And you see this across the board in every large deployments, and with every large data center operators or builders. They are trying to actually bring power in a way which is not done in the past, and blending different power sources together into a single location. Now, what happens is that when you do that, you have other challenges, because not only that you don't have power, the way power is being consumed right now is completely different. It's extremely transient. So a lot of the equipment that we're using before just doesn't work. Like generators don't work very well on transient. It means that you don't only need to innovate about generating the energy, you actually need to innovate in the areas of how you actually use it when you got it in, and don't break the generators, because the grid was basically a heaven for us, right? We can take as much as we want, we can push back as much as we want, everything is okay. If the grid is not there and you're trying to do behind the meter, a lot of dimensions of power is changing.
Yeah.
My view on that for the midterm and long term is that hopefully when we get those super intelligence AI, they will actually figure out how to get energy in a more efficient way. And because right now we are thinking like we used to think. We're just trying to do it better and faster, but we need something that has a higher level of capability than the humans right now to figure out fusion power, to figure out anything else that we can actually leverage to be able to run faster, generate energy in a cleaner way, and create innovation across the board to actually solve the problem. If we deliver in 5 to 7 years fusion power, all of our problems are solved. I'm not sure we can.
It's fascinating in a way that there doesn't seem to be any end to the demand at the moment for new data centers, for power, for and ever changing demand. More density, more compute, more network, and it's not just data centers that we see that growing into. It's the network areas, it's the storage areas, it's everything is growing at an incredible pace. And what it seems to me is, and maybe you can touch base on this, is that because of all the demand that is actually out there, I don't know of any company yet who's basically saying my order book, or at least in the manufacturer space, they say, well, my order book is not full with delays, or at least the few I've talked to. So it feels to me that, and you've said that before, that you called for greater unity among builders, operators, policymakers, and saying that competition is slowing down the innovation that we need at the moment. Do you want to maybe, or do you think that real collaborations across the industry, or what do you think that looks like? And maybe how do we move from competing to co-creating? Is there something companies can do together to actually go fix those problems as a unity?
100% yes. We are right now in an environment which is very unusual. It's a non-compete environment. The demand is superseding any capability to actually deliver anything, probably by 3 to 5x right now. That is a situation where collaboration is actually asked for, because anybody who's going to deliver any data center is going to be able to sell it. That's the situation we are in right now. So competition that was between the different companies who deliver that is becoming smaller and smaller from perspective of, I can collaborate with my competitors because both of us are going to be able to sell the data center. If that collaboration is going to accelerate my data center delivery, give me a technology that I don't have, or give them a technology they don't have, it's not going to hurt my business. It's going to be actually just enhancing my business, because we actually join powers and we have engineering teams talking to each other. There have been multiple attempts to do that. OCP is one attempt to do that, but OCP is extremely challenging right now because it has such a saturated environment, and there are few companies which are very dominating over there. So it's very difficult for the smaller companies to actually get involved and influence. But there are other organizations that are doing this. I think iMasons is doing something very special. iMasons is saying, leave your company at the door. We want to have a pure discussion over here on technology, innovation, education, everything that we do over here, without the relationship that you have to your company. And that started like over 10 years ago, right? So that is a situation that you say, that's the way to create this environment. Now it's a requirement to have this environment. It's not anymore a nice to have that. Then when we started with the iMasons, we did. You have to do that. If you don't collaborate with others, you will either stay behind or will lose an opportunity to accelerate your process and accelerate your business. I think there's only good value in this, as long as it's done in a clean, honest way, which is most of us actually operate that way. So I think the non-compete environment we operate in, it's very interesting and very unusual. It has not been like that for a very, very long time, and we should actually leverage this and leverage this not necessarily on the low level aspect of things, but leverage this on the leadership level in the data centers. Create those forums that will enable collaboration. Create those forums that will enable you to speak freely about technology without being concerned that you're enabling your competitor. And not necessarily that everybody has to share 100% of what they're doing or every investment they're doing, but multiple companies right now investing billions and billions of dollars in developing new technologies, the same technology done by multiple companies. If we shared forces and we share the power together, we'll get faster into better solutions. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I know it's a little bit of a significant difference in mindset because I'm company X. Why would I collaborate with company Y? They are my competitor. Because you're going to get better faster. That's the answer for that. And today, better faster is basically the king of success.
There's something to be said about this, and I've had the opportunity to lead the innovation committee for the last 3 years. And when we started 3 years ago, we were looking through a list of topics that we thought, what are the things that we can fix together that a single company can't fix on their own? And even back then, it wasn't so clear what, even 3 years ago, as little as 3 years ago, it wasn't so clear what topics would really make a difference. And today, we have a list and we go through what's the top three. That's where we are. And I completely concur with what you were saying, the fact that we bring people to the table. And you mentioned a few things earlier about like data centers being consumers of the grid. We haven't announced it yet, so it's going to be coming up later, but I'll let you into a little secret. We're forming a group around actually, how do we all work together to be good consumers of the grid, maybe enable actually, untapped power that we've got on the grid, or, how do we put, different generation methods together? So very, very interesting times indeed. And actually very exciting, very, very exciting. I can't believe
that as there's the world until 2023 and the world after 2023.
That's it. I think you're absolutely right.
The start of time for whatever we're experiencing right now is 2023. The whole thing is changing on all the dimensions. Everything, the way we work, the way we think, the way we operate, the way we communicate, everything is changing right now. How many people are still doing Google search? I don't know, maybe 10%, 15% of the population. The rest of them are using the AI to actually do it for them.
It is. I think there is something very interesting in what you're saying, but also what people have started to learn very quickly is that every tool for their own problems, right? And we all got burned by AI searches that gave us false information, right? So
100%. The other side of this, AI can actually inhibit innovation. Because instead of thinking by yourself out of the box, you just go and ask Grok the answer and you get an answer. It might not necessarily be the right answer, but it's definitely in most cases will not be an innovative answer. It's going to be an answer of what has happened before, maybe more sophisticated, maybe crossing information. But out of the box thinking, it's still a feature that humans have and AI does not. To think different and try and actually see forget about how it was done before. How do we do it right? Or how do we do it in a disruptive way? That is something that AI will get to probably in the next few years. It's not there yet. So if you go to any one of the AI tools and ask them to think out of the box, they have no idea what to do because they rely everything on what they learn. And their learning is basically how we did things before. It's not how we actually want to do things forward.
It's very interesting. I mean, probably debate for another time because we could get into that for hours if we get there on the impact of AI on actual innovation. well, maybe an opportunity to reinvite you actually in the near future. I want to finish on something. So we've talked about technology, we've talked about education, we've talked about all the tools that comes around innovations. But let's finish with the human side of innovation. So, and especially your take on innovation. So you said that that good innovators have got to be both naive and extremely optimistic. I mean, some people might take offense to this, but I think we can see the value there. How have optimism, curiosity, and maybe even a touch of naivety shaped your own approach to innovation and leadership?
Yeah, so innovation has a cycle, and it doesn't happen in one step, and it doesn't happen in 10 steps. It happens usually in 2 to 3 steps. On the first step, when you start to innovate around any aspect of what you do, you have to actually think with no boundaries. So that requires to be a little bit naive, saying, yeah, I can do that, even though people before failed in it. But on the other side, you have to say, I'm going to be successful. And that's where the optimism come in. Because if you're not optimistic, you're going to fail very, very fast. So we talked about fail fast before, because things at the beginning, when you start innovating, especially on disruptive technology, are very difficult to actually accept. And you have to actually be able to be very agile, move your thought process and do different aspects before you stabilize. Now, the first cycle of innovation brings you to a peak of innovation. If you try and insert conservatism or logic or optimization, etc., at that stage, you will end up with a suboptimal innovation. You have to be able to pick to what you think is the best solution that you can get at this point, then optimize. Then it will take you to a peak and then will drop you a little bit down, because when you optimize, your innovation is not as disruptive as it was. But then when you come out of the optimization cycle, you have to do another cycle of innovation. And that will bring you to another level of peaking. So you will peak 2 or 3 times in that cycle. It's like innovate, optimize, until you get to the point that you feel very comfortable that you optimize to a level and you innovate to a level that it's time to move on to the next thing. And that cycle can be fast, by the way. It doesn't have to be years, right? It can be months in between innovation, optimization. But that cycle, I found that from my history to be the most efficient way to create things which are really disruptive. And the second thing is, for that is like, you have to be strong enough to say, I'm okay that people telling me that this isn't what I'm doing is wrong, because a lot of people will tell you that when you try to do disruptive things, and if you don't have persistence and you don't have the level of optimism that I can do that, then you're going to have a challenge with that. And it happened to me in multiple events in my history when we try to do things which are disruptive. And I was in a review session, and an SVP comes and said, there is no way you can do this. And if you're not optimistic and you're not actually at the point that you're a little bit of a dreamer, you'll say, yeah, if he said there's no way I can do that, maybe I should not do that. But if you are a dreamer and you are optimistic and you say, you know what, give me a chance, I'll do it. I can do that. And in a lot of cases, that's enough to actually create enough innovation, enough excitement in your team to deliver something that people tell you it's not possible to deliver. And that, for me, it's like over my 30 plus years of career, it happened like 7 or 8 times that people told me, not possible what you're doing over here. It's not possible. And we delivered on it multiple times. And by the way, just as individuals, that's the greatest feeling in the world. When you actually take something that was considered not possible to do or very difficult, not worthwhile your time, not worthwhile the investment, and you're successful with it, there's no better feeling on a self-satisfaction, self-fulfillment as a professional to get that point.
I must say, and we'll close off on this note. When your boss comes to you as well and saying this is not possible, this is probably maybe one of the earlier lessons that we talked about at the very beginning in enabling innovations to happen in your teams. Maybe that answer is probably not the right one. Or maybe quite a good way to motivate your teams by telling them they can't do it, just to see if they can.
Yeah.
Yuval, that has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I really enjoyed listening to your view on how innovations should be carried out through companies and through the industry. Just for the listeners and viewers that would want to learn more about ECL and find Yuval on LinkedIn, that would be ecldc.com. Very, very interesting companies and definitely very innovative as well. I mean, we had a few discussions around how you incentivize your teams to actually go push the boundaries. That's very, very interesting for me. The discussions after the podcast actually continues on iMasons.org. You can also find the rest of the community on imasons.mobilize.io. And we'll be sure to be there and have proper innovation discussions as and when we can. On that note, Yuval, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And once again, congratulations on your iMasons Innovation Award.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Infrastructure Masons is a global, non-profit, professional association of individuals connected and empowered to build a greater digital future for all. If you too want access to networking events, forums, and summits that foster innovation and influence, register now and join the other 6,000 committed participants at imasons.org/membership application.